What's up, everybody? What's going on here? Another episode of Palangi Studio of Rock, only here on Radio Wigwam, Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time and 8 o'clock UK time. We're coming from all different parts of the country and the world right now. And today we got a special interview. We got Sal Costa in the building. You might maybe remember him from a band called My Darkest Days and Bonds of Murrah. Did I say that right?
Azamara, yeah, that's pretty damn close.
Okay, cool. I'm a little Italian, so sometimes I have that accent.
I am too. I get it.
There you go. So where are you at right now, Sal?
So right now I'm in the Bel Air area of Florida. I'm kind of living by the beach right now, and that's where I'm at. Yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun out here right now.
Everybody out there, Sal's been playing guitar for a lot of years. We've been trying to get this interview a couple of years. COVID hit and everyone kind of retreated in their own spaces and stuff. And then I actually met you. I was saying in 2011 in a
Yeah,
club, My Darkest Days, and I was going to Nashville to record something, and I was like, "Dude," he goes, "I'm like, I gotta get you on a song for lead guitar or something like that." But that's when you guys literally, I think, like 2 weeks later is when you guys exploded.
yeah. It was the trajectory on that whole project was just crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was only a couple years, like 2009 to 13 or something like that. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it wasn't very. It was very short. That project was very short lived, but it was very impactful, which is crazy. It's like even now, like it's just funny because like it doesn't matter if like I go to like a gym or like a place for jujitsu or wherever. There's always somebody who knows my darkest days, and I'm like, man, that's so crazy. And they'll be like, oh yeah, like I listen to you all the time. Like look at my Spotify, and then I look on Spotify, and I'm like, the band is still getting like almost 2 million listens a month on Spotify alone. I'm like, that is wild.
it's crazy.
Think about it's crazy. And yeah, it's just weird. It's like every time I get like royalty checks for My Darkest Days, it's just like it's strange because like we've been disbanded for almost a decade. I shouldn't even say really disbanded because we never officially broke up, but yeah, we haven't played together almost a decade.
Is it because of the 3 days grace? They needed a spot, and because he was his cousin, you know what I mean? He just kind of shifted over there.
I actually left right before that happened.
Oh,
Not
okay.
and that was actually before that even happened. I needed a change and I left the band, and then shortly after that, the band was going to start writing their third record. I left just before we started writing our third record. And then I remember talking to the guys like, yeah, we're just gonna start writing this third record. And then I think that was also the catalyst where Matt ended up going to 3 days grace just after there. So then there was two members left that band, and then it was kind of like, what are you gonna do when there's half the band's gone? So right,
Yeah, yeah. Do you get a new singer, but then that, pisses off people too?
yeah,
And Reed is the other guitar player, right?
yeah. Reed was our kind of like we called him like the auxiliary guy. Like he did some
Okay.
keys, some guitar, yeah, and
Little
yeah,
everything.
a little bit of everything. He was like a guy like, hey, Reed, can you play a little bit of keys? And even if he had no idea how to do it, what I loved about Reed is like when Reed started the band, he joined the band strictly as a keyboard player. I don't think he played any rhythm guitar or anything for us for the first year. But the best part is he didn't play keyboards. We just loved him. And it was like I remember we
Nice.
held these auditions, keyboard auditions, and it was hilarious. So like all these people came out who were like qualified players, but none of them, like, you had to be able to hang with us, and we were not the easiest group at that time to hang with.
Yeah.
Um, we were pretty crazy at that time, so we just felt like there was no one that we'd ever be able to see ourselves tour with. And then Reed at the time was actually working for us as a tech, and we would just always hear him practicing our songs. Like he knew our songs almost better than we did at one point. He just would always be playing
Wow.
them. And then I remember like the auditions were getting so brutal that we were just like, oh man, this is so boring. Like this is not going. We're not finding the right guy. So we started getting Reed to audition people before the audition with the band, and then we were just like, fuck, why don't we just ask Reed? And he's like, I don't really play keyboards, but we're like, but you have the type of personality where he was like us. He was one of us where it's just like you're going to figure it out and you're going to become great at it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
lo and behold, he went from not playing any keyboards at all to like a couple of weeks later being on tour with us and he just fucking woodshedded all the parts and became a keyboard player, and it was awesome to see.
Nice. To be like, we already know him, he's already touring with us anyway. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great.
that's cool. And Chad Kroger, they said, according to Wikipedia, found you guys. Is that true?
Yes. So Chad, 3 Days Grace and Nickelback were on tour together. And 3 Days Grace had passed on our demo over to Chad. Chad heard it,
Oh,
loved it, and that was at the time where he was signing bands and getting bands discovered and all that kind of stuff. So he had just discovered Theory of a Dead Man, Mariana's Trench, and he had his fingers in like 100 pots, and like it was timing. It was like the right music for the right guy, and Chad
yeah.
literally took the band to every single major label, and we showcased, and there was a bidding war for the band, and we got truly one of the last big traditional record deals, which
Yeah.
is now I'm like, wow, we actually got a real record deal, like a record deal. Now it's like a lot of singles deals, and the deals are very crap, and we actually got something substantial and big for that time. So we owe a lot to him for that.
To me, you guys with Sick Puppies were kind of like the last of, I don't know, the modern rock kind of stuff, the new guys hitting the scene, you know?
It really was, and we felt it because I remember our very first tour with Hinder. They were saying, "Man, like you guys just like snaked in there at the last second of whatever it is that we do,"
Yeah.
and we're so right because within a year, like no one was getting those types of record deals anymore, and we just saw like anytime there'd be a new band that would get signed, like their budgets were so tiny to make records, so tiny to tour, and it just made you realize we were so grateful because what people don't understand is like you need those substantial budgets to be able to do things at a big level. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, man, I just want Nickelback or Motley Crue to call me and go on tour with them. I'm like, yeah, but could you afford to go on tour with those guys? Like it's expensive to be able to tour the country because what people don't
Yes.
understand
Yeah.
when you get on a huge tour like that, you can't fuck up. Like you have to have a crew because they won't let you come on tour without a crew because things are run so tight. Like you're talking about playing arenas every night. So
Yeah.
they need to know that the headliners need to know that they can trust not only you but your crew. They're going to show up on time, set up the gear right and on time. Everyone needs to be seasoned. So it's just like, yeah. So you have to be able to afford a bus. You have to be able to at that point be able to afford crew members.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not that easy to be like
Technicians.
technicians. I'm just going to show up on tour with Motley Crue. So it's just I feel so blessed now looking back that like we were in that position of like a huge band called us and like we were able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And a band, people, I don't know if people out there realize, I mean, you guys out there, you always see those buses and there's like 10 of them parked behind a stadium or something. It takes a lot of gear and the amount of effort and breakdown. And it's like you said, it's a fine oiled machine.
Yes.
You have to hit if they say, you got to set up in 10 minutes. You don't have 10 minutes and 30 seconds. You have 10 minutes
Yeah.
because
There's
they start the
10,000.
intro music and then you go on.
Yeah. There's 10,000 people waiting for a show and like you cannot mess up. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah. So it's, as a new band, it's a learning curve as well. We got our asses kicked a few times by,
Were
bigger
you
bands.
were you guys playing out a lot before then, or were you type of band where you played and you made a demo and then things started to really?
No, so that was the beauty of My Darkest Days. It was like before the band got signed and became successful and big, we were doing big things independently.
Oh,
And
okay.
there was big artists that knew who we were at an independent level, and we were selling out venues on our own. And that was like, a special thing as well because like we could go to a club and we could put like, five, six, 700 people into a venue as an independent band and have people there singing our music. And then you look out into the crowd and you're like, oh, there's that guy from that band watching us. And we were just an independent band. And another thing people don't really know either that's super cool is that we actually blew up on MySpace. Like we were one of those bands on MySpace that had
Oh, okay.
millions and tens of millions of views on our demos.
I might have
So
remembered that because I was on MySpace. I followed a
yeah,
few bands. Maybe that's how I found you originally. I'm not sure, but
and that
that
was
was towards the
so
end.
so so long before we quote unquote made it. But it was funny because we would be on tour sometimes. Someone would be like, "I discovered you guys on MySpace years ago," and I'm like, "Man, that is so freaking cool." Yeah,
Wow. Who would
yeah,
know, right? Now it's
right.
MySpace is like nothing anymore.
Nothing, no crap.
Now you guys, you did, I think yourself, you did a like remastered or greatest hits, My
Yeah,
Darkest Days on a CD or vinyl set. I seen.
yes, yeah. So that just came out, which was super exciting because, like I said, you know, pretty much the only way we're in touch right now is really like royalty business. It's just like, making sure everyone's getting paid and all that kind of stuff from our royalties. So aside from that, we haven't really released anything. And then the record
Yeah.
label, like I said, like there's been this surge of My Darkest Days in like online, like we're just getting so many views, which is,
Could
it's
be
really mind
from all
blowing.
the TikTok. You can use the music in the stories and your
Yeah.
videos and
Yeah,
cover
and it
songs.
yes, and it's like I get fan mail all the time from like new like fans that are young. I'm like, man, this is really cool. So anyway, so obviously the labels have a pulse on all that stuff, and they wanted to put out something kind of new. So what they did is they re-released our very first debut album, strictly on vinyl.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so that came out, and that was super cool
It
to have
has
some.
two extra songs, right? You said two unreleased songs.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I think it's I don't even remember now. Too. I should go check the vinyl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, check that out there. I don't I still buy CDs, so unfortunately
Yeah,
I can't do the vinyl stuff.
I get it,
But
man.
but how lucky were you? Like not only Chad found you guys, but he actually sang on your debut, I would say hit song, from the first record. That
Oh
and
man,
Zach Wild too. He's credited on
Ludacris.
that song.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the Ludacris version.
I
Um,
I have once. Yeah, I discovered
so
a while ago. I was like, that's exists.
that was so, man. Like I'll tell you a cool story. So like I said, we're independent, and at the time, and we just signed this record deal. Albums in the bag. Porn Star Dancing is on the record, and then the album's not pressed yet, but the album's done.
Yep.
And Chad gives us a call one day. He's just like, you know, Ludacris wants to rap on the song. And this is already, we knew Zach was going to play on it. So we're like, man, like Chad's going to, and then Chad's like, and I want to sing on it too. So we're like, holy crap. So Zach is going to be on this. Zach Wild, we're going to have Chad on it. And now Ludacris wants to rap on it. So I'll
Yep.
never forget this. This was an amazing moment. We played a little show in Barrie, Ontario. It was this dingy little club. And I remember as we're pulling in to play, we're waiting for sound check. And, like I said, we're independently successful at this point. We had signed our record deal, but the world didn't know who we were.
Yeah, well,
And
very beginning.
very beginning, and we're sitting in this dingy little club, and I remember somebody's, I don't know, laptop goes off, and it's like, holy fuck, I just got the cut of Ludacris rapping on our song. So I remember we plugged it into the venue, and we all listened to it for the first time through this venue, and all the staff, like no one knew what the fuck was going on but us. And we knew in that moment that we were going to be big. We just knew it. We were like, no, this is just, it's a hit song with, you have to think at the time also Ludacris was also like in Fast and Furious. So he was now not only, he
Yeah,
was a
he was
celebrity on
acting.
multiple fronts, he was
Yeah,
acting. So people knew him on so
that's
many
kind of
different
how
ways.
I knew him more.
Right there you go. So we knew we had something big, and then lo and behold, a couple of months later, it just took off.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I like the song Every Lie when I was listening to it again today.
Yeah, it's great songs. Both albums, specifically the first record. The second record was a great record too, but our first album, it had true, legitimate hit songs, and it was great to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, there was something I was gonna say. I heard now listening now. I heard 3 Days Grace within your guys' first record. Now it's funny though, but I like Matt's vocals better on your stuff because they're not as layered. All those technical
Yes,
people out there,
yes.
he didn't layer them as much, and I do like that sound more. But what kind of sets you guys apart at the time, even though like you said, like you were the last of getting signed, you weren't like the Hinders, the Three Doors Down, the Saving Abels. The music was a little more techy and a little more upbeat, and it had the I don't know if it's you and the other guitarists and stuff like battling over melodies when you're writing and
Yeah, yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah, well, you know what? The beauty of I think My Darkest Days in general was that like uh we always kind of just did what we wanted.
Yeah.
And you know, like there reached a point where you reach a point where every artist in the early days is desperate in a way because like especially when you have an opportunity because you're like I can't fuck this up, like this is a one in a million opportunity and I can't mess it up. But then I think there was a period where I think we all knew our worth and we knew we were great. And I don't mean
Yeah.
that in a cocky way because I feel like a lot of us when we separated from each other, we weren't as good ever as we were together. But it was like that recipe of
Hmm.
greatness coming together. And it's funny because like you could replace different people in that band, even people that like were more maybe quiet and shy, and it would have just changed everything. And I think I think that was a that was what made us realize that like you know what, we have to understand that we're actually good, and if we just do what we do, people are going to like it because
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
got us here in the first place. And we would see on tour other bands like like I remember one of our very first tours ever. We were big tours. We were opening up First of Four for Sick Puppies, and we were the baby band and on that tour. But I remember other bands that were bigger than us at the time coming up to us and asking us for advice. And I remember thinking like, geez, like that's really cool. Like, hey, how do you guys do your harmonies like that? How do you guys do that? And I will say that nobody in any of my musical experiences, and I've had a lot with high level professional artists, I've never ever in my life met a group of guys that were that willing to be great ever. And that was what made My
Mm.
Darkest Days special, is that we practiced 8 hours a day for years
Played all the
before
time.
played during tour, before anyone knew who we were, while people knew who we were always rehearsing. And I mean, there was a period there where I lived 3 hours away from the band. And I traveled there every single day. I drove
Oh.
6 hours every day to just rehearse for 8 hours. It was crazy, but my even like at the time, my girlfriend and people were like, "Are you fucking crazy? If you guys are successful, or why do you guys have to practice that much?" And I was like, it wasn't even a question. I was like, well, how do you become great? That's the only way to
Yeah.
become great.
Yeah.
And so we had that, and I've never found that again, to be honest with you, in terms of just guys that were that willing to be great. Yeah,
Yeah, because you have to keep practicing the songs and you have to keep the momentum. It's like
yeah,
you could take time off, but then sometimes you kind of lose it, or and
dude.
you know something is coming, so you're like, we have to be ready.
We would loop a chorus of a song for hours to the point where like you would become delirious from
Yeah.
I'm talking like hours. Like we would just not stop
So you say,
rehearsing
let's play this song, this
the
chorus, and then you play it
same 16 bars and on repeat on loop, to the point the idea was to be able to do it flawlessly and be able to do anything you want. I could like have a conversation
like a
and then
muscle
go,
memory. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what we what we did.
Yeah. I remember too, you on stage, like you playing the part so effortlessly, where it's like you said, you could have been drinking coffee and your hands still going.
Yeah, you just that's it, and it's not even about being like the greatest guitar player. It's just like literally just putting in the hours, to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, it takes other things away too, of like venue problems and something's, people don't realize behind the scenes that stuff goes on between whatever's going on in that day. And sometimes you have more energy or more willingness to be like, yeah, let's go out there. And we always want to do a good job, but it depends
Yeah,
on where your mind's at. And if you can play it easily, whether you're, let's say, deathly sick to extremely pissed off, and it's the
yeah.
same performance, that's when you got it.
Our motto was always like we need to be able to be a 15 out of 10, so that
Oh,
if
okay.
shit hits the fan, we're still a 10 out of 10, and we're
Yep.
still as flawless as can be. And it happens like there's many times on tour where like playing a huge venue, and then there's crazy technical issues. And you know, we would see bands just like walk off the stage in like a tiff and like upset and angry, and I'm not playing. And we were always the band that like no matter what you threw at us, we could do it, you know. And
Wow.
that's yeah, it was fun.
How's that different moving to your second bands? And you were on the top 40 Canadian charts too, everybody. So it's like
Yeah, I was
you've had it all.
yeah. So right after my darkest days, I had actually a solo career called Smashing Satellites, and
Mm,
with that, I had a song in the top 40 on my own as a solo artist, and
that's
and,
awesome.
and then I had two songs in the top 40 or top 30 in Canada with that project, um, and then you know, but again, like I was never able to find, you know, that chemistry again, you know, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and what's made it more special. And then Bonds of Mara, the project I started recently, just before COVID, um, that project was a lot of fun, and it was just a bunch of like you know seasoned, known musicians, both Canadian and American, and it
Like a
was like
mini super group.
yeah, yeah. It actually started off, funny enough, I never really told many people this, but it really like the original person who played on the demos, it was I started the idea on my own. And I think the first person I called was Dave Benedict. No, first person I talked to actually about the project was um, they were never big in America, but they were very big in Canada, a band called I Mother Earth.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of the level that they would be at in America. They were like oh my god, let me try and think. I guess you could say they were like our three doors down, or our
Oh,
they were like our Red Hot Chili Peppers almost.
wow. Okay.
Actually.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
were an arena band, Canadian arena band, big band, multi-platinum selling artist, but they never crossed the border. They never made it in America. So it was the singer of that band who I was very good friends with, and we started it, and then called Dave Benedict from Default to play bass, who's a dear friend of mine. I love Dave to death. And and then we didn't have a drummer for a minute. So I actually, funny enough, I reached out to Jack Irons from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam original drummer. And
Yep.
Jack Irons I sent him the stuff. We had a call one night, ran me through the history of the Chili Peppers, which was so cool to hear that from
You're
the
just
founding
laying, sitting
member.
back. Yeah. Keep going. Yep.
Yeah, I was actually in the bathtub and I was just like, this is the fucking coolest thing ever. Like, Jack telling me about the history of being in the Chili Peppers and being in
Yeah.
Pearl Jam. And so anyway, so then Jack actually played on the original demos and of that project. And I really tried to get Jack to be a part of the band, but Jack's like, I just don't want to tour. So I was like, that's
Okay.
cool. So then Rich from Finger 11, he came over, and then he was applying for citizenship in America, so he wasn't able to play with us in Canada. So then we ended up getting a friend to fill in for him.
Okay.
And so yeah, it was cool because our very first song we released completely independently, and then went top 15 in Canada, um, which was really really cool. And it was just a song that like I had this riff, and we kind of just got into a room and jammed it out, and there it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
The things that come easy are always the better things you want to go with. Things that maybe are like, you ever worked on a song where it just takes like 5 months later, it's a decent song, but you're like, it's just too much work or it's still not right. Those
It's
are,
not, yeah. I had a song like that on the Satellites, Smashing Satellites record, and we worked a month straight every single day in in like a big studio with you know wasting a lot of budget on this one song
yeah.
that I thought was going to be a masterpiece. And in the end, it was a masterpiece to me, but nobody else. You know, it ended up being one of those songs, right? Where I listened to it, I'm like, that's exactly the way I wanted to fucking be. But it wasn't commercial, and but yeah, it was interesting. You know, so and then the stuff you put little effort to, just people like. I'm like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because we view it more simplistic. I know things that I put in where I'm like you said, I want this to be like, say, the next single off. It doesn't work that way.
No,
You have to view it as this is just your next song. And then when you're done with things, like what is that single or what am I doing?
yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And then you just trust in the process, and you know, I realize this now with like anything, like even other my other business ventures and whatever, and what my other artistic ventures. It's like if it's meant to be great, it will find its way.
Yeah.
And it just does. And it might not be on your timeline, but it will find its place in its rightful time.
And those songs are super, to me, they're super rare too. If you think of, all the great bands and stuff like that, like I'm like, say Metallica. Metallica's got tons of them, but you could boil it down to like, what if they didn't write those top 10 songs? It's like,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think, but then like, even on your guys' record, like, I like all the other songs besides the single, to be honest.
Dude, you know what? I'll tell you this. Porn Star Dancing was
It's
the greatest
simple.
opportunity.
It's really simple,
It was, but I'll say it was the greatest thing and worst thing that happened to us.
Okay.
Because it was great because like it was like we hit success and we wrote it for years, and till this day we still do. We still get royalty checks for this music from that record, But
Yeah. I told everybody, I go, I'm interviewing Sal today, and they go, "Who's Sal?" I go, "From My Darkest Days." Oh yeah, they're on my gym playlist.
yeah. Like I would show up to CrossFit sometimes, and it's just like playing, and I'm like looking around, I'm like, all right, cool. Does anyone know? That I was in that band, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But yeah, but the record label had a way bigger vision for us. You have to understand too, like a lot of rock bands at that time were getting signed to rock labels.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
rock labels, their reach is rock. Now we got signed to Def Jam, and Def Jam at the time had
Yeah.
Justin Bieber, Rihanna, Ludacris. They had all the big pop stars. We were the really the only true rock band. I think us and Bon Jovi were the only quote unquote bands on the label. Everyone else was huge pop stars.
Yeah.
And who signed us was David Massey, who signed Oasis. And I don't know if you know who L.A. Reid is, but L.A. Reid
Yep.
is Babyface, LaFace Records. He also is, most people know him as a judge on X Factor, right? I think it was X Factor. Yes. At one point, L.A. Reid. And anyway, so their vision for us was to be pop stars. Eventually, they heard like songs like "Can't Forget You," "Like Nobody Else,"
Yeah.
"Without You," and they saw like this big commercial Maroon 5 type band.
Yeah.
That's what a different Maroon 5. Like obviously they're different stylistically, but
Yeah.
that was going to be the trajectory of the band. They're going to be pop stars. But what ended up happening was when Porn Star Dancing led as our first single, I don't think anybody at the label really anticipated how big that song was going to be for rock music, that they were worried after, I believe, that if we started releasing our poppier stuff to pop music, that rock would be like, forget these guys. And then if it didn't work out at pop, then we'd have nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So we were happy to just be big at rock though. Like we loved it. And we still get pop radio play because of the Ludacris versions, and all of our records were scattered with like features from people from different genres. So we always got pulled into different genres. And,
Yeah. It's got that techie and poppy melodies and stuff in there. And it's,
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think at the time, I'm pretty damn sure, I think Porn Star Dancing was even like top 5 alternative on the alternative charts at that time.
Alternative rock.
The alternative rock as well.
Yeah.
So it charted on multiple different charts as well. It was mainstream rock, active rock. Yeah, it was alternative rock. And then we got some pop radio play as well.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'm sure when it hit you, it's like hard to think about it. It's like, is this real?
Dude, yes. It is the strangest.
Surreal.
It is beyond surreal because you have to think like we were from Ontario, okay? And 99% of people in Canada won't even get a Canadian record deal. And if you get a Canadian record deal to a big major Canadian record label, you have then a 99% chance you have like a 1% chance of ever crossing the border and reaching America. So here we are, this band from Ontario, and we signed this big American record deal, big Canadian deal, big European deal, and were in our basement because the band had a house that the band
Yeah.
rented, and we just rehearsed together all the time.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're like, oh, we got a record. That's real. Like this just actually happened. But we're still rehearsing. You know, we know the record deal's there. We know it's big. We know this stuff. They told us everything. We're meeting all these crazy people. And I'll tell you, the very first time that it felt real was, like I said, we were rehearsing in the basement, just a bunch of dudes. And we got a call from the record label, and they're like, "Oh yeah, so we're planning for the music video for Porn Star Dancing. It's good. We want to release it, you know, with the song and all that kind of stuff, and we want to have a big impact." And they start telling us like how we're shooting this music video, and they're talking about helicopters and renting out the top of the Hard Rock in Vegas, and it's like going to be only ours. And it's still, we're like, get off the phone with the record label, like, is that fucking real? Like, is that a real thing?
That was when they still played music videos on TV too. You guys were kind of at the tail end of that, and
tail end of that too. Yeah.
And you kind of so I didn't know it, but this was kind of before backing tracks, because now I was probably like, they probably played with backing tracks because everything that was in your guys' records, but you played it all real, and that's kind of the way it started. When I listened to it today again, I was like, they kind of started that of everybody's knocked you off, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
That sound.
There was a lot of knockoffs right after us, for sure. And like,
wicked.
People dressing like us, because we had a very unique style for what we did.
The Mohawk. Nobody did the Mohawk though, like you though.
Yeah, well, thanks. But yeah, you would feel sometimes like new band come on the scene, and everyone's just trying to catch what's successful, right?
Yes.
But so I remember getting on a plane and going to Vegas with the band, and still thinking to myself, like, just like saying goodbye to my girlfriend at the time, and like I'm like, I don't know, like we have a record deal, like it still doesn't seem real. And then we get to Vegas, and there's all these record people, label people there, and they literally rented the whole top of the Hard Rock Hotel. There's helicopters. Freaking Ludacris flies in on a private jet, and and we're just these dudes, and I'm like, we're just trying to be cool, because we're just these dudes that just signed this deal, and now we're surrounded by all these celebrities, and then all of a sudden, like, there's like 70 strippers there, and then we make this video that goes absolutely viral, and then, which is what crazy thing is, like, by the time Porn Star Dancing hit radio, and I think that went #1 in America, it was like a couple of months. So it really truly happened for us so fast that I sure as shit didn't expect like things to happen that quick.
Yeah.
And we literally said goodbye to my friends. I'll see you in a couple of weeks after this tour, and then never came back.
Yeah, 4 years later, here I am.
Yeah.
Well, even gear wise, it's like you said, you coming from the basement, the garage and stuff, and you're like, the stuff, people don't realize the stuff that you play with sometimes isn't right for the big touring stuff. So even that's a shock. It's like, I got to rethink my guitars and my rig. And I was going to talk a little bit of the guitars you have behind you. I noticed you have an acoustic Ovation. I'm an Ovation guy.
Yeah.
What else? So are those all your guitars from I remember, I think the Flying V you used on stage.
The Flying, actually, I'll show you here. Hold on a second. I'll bring one out. Actually, recently, I'll tell you this too. This still, I mean, everybody knows me most for playing this Flying V. This was the guitar.
Yep.
And it's got a lot of been battle.
It's got some wear. Everybody listening to the audio version, he's got a Flying V guitar. If you don't know what that is, look it up.
Yeah. So my collections, I was at 25 guitars at one point, and mainly Gibson, because I was endorsed by Gibson, so I was getting guitars like crazy at one point. And
are they just giving them to you, or at a discount?
They're just giving them to us.
I
everyone has a different deal with their thing, but at the time, Gibson, they really, really freaking believed in us. And but anytime they had something come up, I would do it for them. If there was like a big event, they'd ask me to go and play, and I would play. And I did a lot of stuff for them so it was mutual, but I always felt like I got the better end of the deal. I was getting guitars all the time. So anyways, I had 25 guitars up until a couple of years ago, and then I started looking at all these guitars, and I was just like, you know what? I always go back to the same couple. Doesn't matter what project I'm doing, where or what. it's always the same. So I started literally giving them to people. And as I started thinking, I was like, you know what? I was like, these are, each guitar is like a couple $1,000s. And I'm like, some people will work their whole life to buy this guitar, and I got it for
Yeah.
free. And if I
Yeah.
can give this to somebody, fucking why not? I don't need 25 guitars. So I started just, if I meet somebody, they're like, oh, like I'm a guitar player, I'm really trying to save up, I'd be like, hang tight, I got this for you. And then boom, take it. You
Damn.
know?
Yeah, because some of them, nobody like can afford a $3,000 guitar. You know what I mean? You're
No, no.
generally.
Yeah, and like I said, if I have them and I'm not using them, to me, that just becomes stealing. And I'm like, I'm just happy if somebody will get some use of them, because I'm like, it's been hanging on my wall and I keep using this one 100 times over. So
True.
go,
Yep.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that white Stratocaster there too. I use that guitar in a insane amount as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, some companies are great like that. Sometimes I get a lot of discounts with mine, but sometimes they do send you free stuff
Yeah.
in exchange
Yeah.
for whatever. And it's nice. Some companies they don't really do too much, and you're like, well, why do you have an endorsement or support program?
Yeah. I think that the hard sell nowadays is that, with when you think of musical instruments, who the hell uses musical instruments anymore? Right? It's mainly rock guys still, but rock isn't at that level right now. Where
Yes. Yep.
it's kind of like they have to justify giving you like a $4,000 amp when, like, are they going to get that type of exposure, right? So
Mm.
it's a tough sell on their end as well, right? But yeah, I mean, I've had many great companies I've worked with over the years, and like I said, since I was 21 years old, I've never bought a piece of musical gear ever since. So to me, I'm just like,
Wow.
it's gluttonous of myself to have stuff if I'm not using it and not give it to people. So now, funny enough, like, my collection is, yeah, I have 15 guitars, and a lot of people say that's a lot, but like, if you knew what my collection was in terms of amplifiers and everything, it's like this big to what it used to be, because I just, it feels wrong having it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a lot of space, you guys moving from Canada to Florida and back, it's like
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember because I've been following you for a while that you had a lot of land and stuff up there. Is that kind
Yes.
of the same near where you are now, or is it more like city?
No, so what we did was we were living like pretty secluded. We were living 5 minutes away from a town, but we had like a 4 acre kind of like very private
Yep.
place. And then when we moved out here, like, for music stuff, and I was like, you know what, I really want to be by the ocean. So we have a place just by the beach, and it's a bigger house but smaller property. But I kind of prefer that at this stage of my life. We
Yeah.
had like we had an animal sanctuary back there. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a
we
lot of upkeep too.
so much upkeep, and we had, there was it just made sense having all that property. But out here, to have that like acres of property, it was like we have to be either further away from the ocean, and I decided that we wanted to be close to the beach.
Did you
Yeah.
did you miss the hurricane that just came in?
Okay, I'll tell you a cool story about this hurricane. So we missed it. It was supposed to literally directly hit where I live. Okay.
Oh,
And I live by the ocean.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I'm new here. So I'm like, holy shit, this is gonna fucking just destroy us. And I start talking to some of like my neighbors and stuff, and people that have been locals here for many years, generational, and they weren't scared at all. And I'm like, okay. I was just like, but if it hits us, we're screwed. They're like, yeah, but it's not gonna hit us. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And, okay, let me tell you this. Now that you're local, you need to understand something. I'm like, okay. So they're just like, in the last 100 years, there's been 30 hurricanes, like, cat 3, 4, 5, that were supposed to hit us. And in the 11th hour, it always beelines. And they're just like, but this is why. So I live on the Gulf of Mexico, and it's a certain stretch of the Gulf that used to be the land of the Seminole Indians.
Okay.
And throughout all of that area, there's like ancient burial grounds and all kinds of like, their dumping grounds. You can still find some of their clay pots and whatnot. You can find arrowheads and everything. And they're just like, there's this one spot that where they used to kind of like put all of their stuff back in the day, and you can still find some of their things. And you can go there anytime, and there will always be in this little area 50 to like 80 wild peacocks, just strangely. And
Weird.
you don't see them anywhere else. They're just eerily around there. So they're
Yeah.
just like, this area from this stretch to this stretch is protected, and this like 40-minute or hour stretch of land or drive, they're just like, it just doesn't get hit. So, and they were like confident as hell. And it's funny because like in the 11th hour, it just went shh, just be like,
Wow.
yeah. So I mean,
So if you
I
had
want
lived
to,
an hour away, it would have hit you.
yeah, oh yeah, and it decimated people in Naples. Like you just headed like an hour and a half south of us, and yeah, south, yeah, and it just destroyed,
Man.
destroyed, destroyed
Do you
Naples.
do you have like a storage unit or something? You ever thought about like maybe I'll get something to store like your higher collectibles like up north or something somewhere? Or I always think about that if I were to move.
It's a good thought. It is a good thought. I don't know. I have to start thinking about it. But honestly, man, like it's as strange as this sounds, like I I don't care about stuff at all. Like if and I and this doesn't come from like I don't value it, because I value how much things obviously cost, and the creation of things, and being able to own things. But
Yeah.
I'm not attached to anything in that way. Like for me, it's always this like, are my dogs safe? Are my kids safe? Is my wife safe? Am I
Yeah.
healthy? If that's it, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with starting over if I have to, and I'm cool if I were to lose this whole guitar collection. I wouldn't cry over it at all, and not because I can't get more guitars. Because even if I couldn't get more guitars, it just doesn't, stuff doesn't own me like that. You know what I mean? So I guess for me, it's more just about like, just it's like, is everybody safe and healthy?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I bring that up because last year we had a house fire and it took out all my studio stuff and equipment. And this year I've had to
And,
rebuild from scratch.
but let me ask you: is it almost in a way like better than it was before potentially?
It's way better now.
Right? And that's what I'm getting at. It's just like I went through that loss. I was in a fire as well, and we fucking, our shit got destroyed.
Yeah.
This was a couple of years ago, just before COVID. Our house caught on.
Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't hear about that one.
It did actually. The farm that we had, that property, got engulfed in flames, and we had to start. We built a new house essentially on there.
Wow.
And at the very beginning of it, I was just like, this is fucking crazy. But I'll never forget, like, it happened. It was snowing as well. And I step outside, our house is on fire. And as our house was on fire, I was looking at the snow, like it was beautiful snowfall. And I was just like, the firemen were just like taking over our house. And I was just like, holy shit, it's a beautiful night out. And it made me realize in that moment, I'm like, once we rebuild this, it will be better. And if we survived, and it will be okay. It's hard in that moment sometimes to like wrap your head around, I lost my stuff. I paid for this stuff. And like, what do I do now? But the universe always has a way of working it out, whether it's just like somebody, all of a sudden might come to your help, or people coming together. I put that out in the universe, and then it usually happens. And then I'm usually like,
Yes.
you know what?
Yeah.
This
If you
turned out
if you think
better.
that way, it'll definitely help. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, as shitty as that situation was for you, in a way, it probably turned itself around. I mean, that's what I like to believe, because you can't stop bad things from happening. So it's just like, you kind of just got to make the best of what's left.
It does. It's I was surprised like when my fans started to GoFundMe for me. I didn't ask anybody to do that. And we raised enough to get the initial stuff of to start to rebuild because I'm a buy and seller. So
Yeah.
what pissed me off personally is that I took, I don't know, 4 or 5 years of buying and selling equipment, teaching lessons and all that kind of stuff to get the setup that I needed, that I wanted. It's like I don't want to have to go to a professional studio. I want to do everything here, but still
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
sacrifice a huge quality wave. And I felt like I got there before a literal, no joke, 3 days before I got the final guitar that I thought I was going to be done with the studio, everything. Got everything 3 days before, and then I released my song "Fire of Love" five
No
day,
way.
yeah, a couple days before that, and it was just so freaking weird. And but now seeing the equipment I had now or before, and then now I'm like, this stuff is so much better than
Right?
even before. But it's a lot of work, and it's for me, like I'd hate to see all your stuff. I'd rather have you have that money from the stuff. If something ever bad happened,
No,
it's
no,
tough.
it's totally no. I get you as well, but you know what, man? It's like I've realized this now too because we've been through a flood once and a house on fire, and it makes you actually does make you mentally stronger. Like
Yeah.
you either break under that kind of pressure and be like, "Fuck it, my life sucks. I'm done with it," or you're like, "Oh, this is a test, and I'm gonna be up to the test, and I'm gonna become out a better, stronger person when this is done." And I think if you can kind of like again, like I'm not gonna preach this because there's moments where I don't always think like this, and I have to remind myself about it. But I notice when I go through periods where I follow that mantra, life is just better. It's like it's a difference between you getting your car scratched and be like, now this ruined my month, and my car
Yeah.
getting scratched, and it's like it's a
Yeah.
fucking car and I can get it fixed and it will happen. And yeah, it sucks. And I don't want to have to pay to do that now because I want to do something else. But at the end of the day, I've realized this now too. I had a mentor of mine who said, like in your last minutes on this earth, your deathbed, you have 5 minutes left to live. You're not going to care about your house catching on fire, the time you scratched your car. None of it
Yeah.
matters,
Yeah.
right? It's just you just want to be here with the people that you love, doing things you love to do, right?
Yeah.
And then so now anytime something happens, I really try and put that image of me being like last moments on earth. Would this matter? No. Okay, so then it should matter now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's
Harder said than done, and I don't always do it, but I like that lesson and I try and live by that.
yeah. And anybody out there too, you do teach guitar lessons and stuff. I seen you teaching a lot.
Yeah,
You still
I
doing a
do
lot of
more.
that too?
I do more coaching in terms of like I now what I like to do is I really like to just develop people who I see have that drive that I had when I was starting out. Um, because I found that like when I was getting started, I'm sure you know this as well, is like it was really hard to find somebody to tell me like who wanted like when I was like I would go to a guitar teacher, I would go to anybody and I'd be like, I want to be a rock star. And they'd be like, fuck, I don't know how to do that. I don't know.
I don't know
That
any
stuff is
path at all.
yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta
no.
know
I know
somebody
the
and
scales well.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so now what I like to do is I like to teach people and develop people who are really trying to do something with it. And not that I love teaching everybody, but the people that I coach mainly have that kind of um, thinking where it's like I want to do this, what do I do? And then I gear my direction towards them in the way of like how to do it on a scale of being a professional musician who's touring. It's a different
Yes.
thing. You can teach anybody how to play guitar or how to sing or how to write songs, but it's just like there's a way to do things within the industry, and if you know that going ahead, you'll be a step ahead.
I've got the perfect person to hook you up with her name's Melissa Harding, which she was friends with James Michaels from 6 a.m. We
Nice.
we interviewed her and James on the show. We do or she does a monthly singer safe place, and it's exactly
Nice.
what you just said. Of we kind of all the singers get together and it's for advice, experience. James
Yes.
there like all the time. I think James Durbin or something mentioned about coming in one time, she said, or something. I can't remember, but
Nice.
I think you with your history and all of that, that would be something to explore. So I could
Yeah.
connect you guys via Instagram, social media. It's like
I
once a
totally
once a month to pop in. I know she's been wanting to have another artist, and
let her know. I would love to do that because at this stage in my life now, I see myself as more of like being in service to other people.
okay.
Um, just because like I look back now like when you're experiencing success in what you do, it's sometimes hard to understand what it is, or like it becomes just your life, right? You know, you're not thinking it as like, oh my God. It's more just like, this is what I do. And now that I have kids and I'm looking at all these next generation of people. I'm just like, I just want to help people. I want to help, because to me, I now like having been in band with hit songs and having toured the world and all that kind of stuff and having done these cool things. For me, I get excited watching people that I help do great things. Like that gets me way more
Yeah.
excited than myself doing great things now, because you know, I'm like, I've had that opportunity. I'm blessed for it. And now it's just like, I get really excited watching other people do it. And I'm like, man, like I was able to help that person do this. Like I have a guy that I've been coaching that I actually met on tour with My Darkest Days. And his name is Revv. And he's like a really great cover artist. And he's a unique and funny guy. My dogs. Just a really cool guy. And I met him on tour with MDD, and he was telling me you always wanted to do music. And I took him under my wing, and this is like a decade ago almost. And then I just saw him, I don't know, a couple months ago, like on tour,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
acted while he was on tour here. And I was like, that's great, because I've been mentoring him and helping him, it's cool to just. I was happy to see that. It made me happier than if I was doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's always great to give back something. I never wanted to teach guitar at first, and then I kind of gave into it, and I'm glad I did now, because exactly what you said, you kind of want to you get the, because I don't know, like the excitement and the joy and the enjoyment of, like you were saying, like maybe like doing another hit single and being that big, it wouldn't be as rewarding as like you said, seeing your students and your friends and stuff succeed more than you do, you know.
Yes, and you know, right now, like I'm actually involved. Like it's part of the reason why I'm here in the States right now. So I'm involved in actually a pretty big musical project in America. I can't really
Okay.
talk about it yet, but I will be soon. But but it's funny because it's like you said, it's like I'm doing it again, you know, at a high level, but I'm much more excited seeing other people do it that have
Yeah.
never done it before, because you know I know I never had that person that was able to say, Sal, like I've been through this, don't do ABCD, do ABCD, stay away from ABCD, and
Yeah.
you know, and talk to ABC. I never had that, and so now, like, you know, I'll take some of my people that I coach and I'll introduce them to people in the industry, and you know, you just start to see things move for them, and it's cool.
That's awesome. Well, we're running out of time here, but we can chat a few minutes after the air. Thank you everybody for tuning in here, audio wise. You make sure you go over to our YouTubes. It'll be on the Facebooks and everywhere else. This interview with Sal, this is awesome. There's actually a lot more stuff I want to talk about. So maybe next year I can have you on. We'll talk
Yeah.
about some more cool things out there. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. We're Radio Wigwam, Palangi Studio of Rock. We're literally broadcasting from studio. That was the whole idea, the whole program. And we've been on the air for, I think, about 5-6 months now, and we appreciate it. You guys tuning in. We've been kicking ass on Mixcloud, which is kind of a new thing to me, because I'm not really into the podcast stuff really, but you call this a podcast, I guess. I call it an interview, everybody.
Yeah.
But thanks. Make sure you go check out the new vinyl edition and anything Sal's going on. You can he's on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you follow him. And you know, just keep rocking, folks. Any last words, Sal? Throw it in there right now.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. And it was actually good because I haven't done this in a little while, like I said, and it was good to do it again.